All right. I think we're live. We're
Hey, what's going on, Will?
live.
How art thou?
Oh man. I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. I'm hoping that this is actually going to work this time. Last time we had a little bit of a hiccup. Um I'm crossing my fingers that things are going well now. So, yeah. So, good. What about you?
Doing just fine, man. Doing just fine. It's been a good day and looking forward to doing this and kind of diving into stuff we've been talking about. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to going through. I know that we have some announcements though that we want to kind of talk about, right? Before we get into the good stuff.
Yeah, yeah, I guess we do have some announcements, don't
We
we?
have some things coming up
Yeah.
that we want people to be thinking about.
Why don't you start with the announcements on your stuff, and then I can do my own announcements.
Sure, absolutely. So we want to keep letting you guys know that we have another podcast called The Faith Roundtable. Essentially, what happened was we had a lot of people and books getting sent our way that were not exactly political, right? They didn't hit that intersection between politics and faith. That's kind of our sweet spot on faithful politics. And but we thought it was great content. And, I love thinking through all that stuff and talking to theologians and pastors and all that. And so we came up with the idea. I don't know, what was it, like maybe a year ago now,
Yeah.
maybe something like that, and basically start something called the Faith Roundtable, where we're taking theologians, authors, pastors, thought leaders, Christian leaders, just to talk about issues facing the church. And it's ranged from deep dives into one we just did on the Samaritan woman, which was amazing because I did this reel and it got like 500 views within like 30 minutes. And I'm not sure if it's gotten much after that, but I was like, what the heck? I just posted it and it was there. But it was basically, like we all have heard, probably if you've been in church, preaching on the Samaritan woman in John 4, and how she was like basically this really like, you know, um, like this seductress essentially, and this kind of terrible, really sinful person. But this scholar really challenged all of those. And I got to say, I'm convinced by her argument, to be honest, that basically there's a lot of other explanations there, and she's seen in a very good light. So that's a super fascinating conversation. We dive deep into that, and we've talked about sexual abuse in the church and different, really heavy issues. And so it's worth checking out. Faith Roundtable normally comes out on Thursdays. One didn't come out. One's not coming out tomorrow because I haven't had one. I had a bunch of people and then I ran out of episodes, and now I have a few coming up. So when I have them, I put them out there, and we want you guys to tune into that. Also, we have a merch store that we want to make sure you guys are jumping on. It's a great way to support our podcast. I mean, Will and I basically we fund this, not basically, we fund this completely out of pocket. And it's a great way. We're thinking about doing Patreon and doing or something like that, and moving in a little bit more of an organized direction in those ways. But we're kind of leery about sponsorships and all of that because we want to make sure it's the right thing. And so, a great way for you to support is get some awesome merch. Will does it all of his awesome shirts that he has. He's the one who designs them. I love them. I've gotten a few, and I think that you guys should to check it out. It's on our website. Anything more you wanted to say about the merch store?
Yeah, I'm trying out our share screen feature because
Ooh, very
everything's
nice, very
doing that. So
nice.
so like here is our collection of wares. It's called the Shop of Divinity and Democracy, which is also what our Substack is called. Um, you can buy shirts that are divinely inspired, politically charged, or just the middle ground. The signature stuff is basically just a bunch of faithful politics swag.
Love it.
You can try out one of our Pontius Pilates yoga mats.
There you go.
That's new. Um, this is one of my more recent designs. It is inspired by my love for Baldur's Gate and
Nice.
RPGs, and that's the only reference or inference that shirt has. If you think of anything else outside of there, that's on you. Um, and let's see, what's one of my other favorite shirts here? I like my Wokemon shirt,
I do
and
that. I think that's funny.
the Let Us Pray or Let Us
That's
Hide
another
Five.
one of my faves. The Nah. I like Nah, Rosa Parks. As
Yeah,
Baldur's Gate, is that Norse mythology, by the way? Is Baldur? Because I'm pretty sure Baldur is a Norse god. Mm.
I think it's like D&D mythology, the Sword
Oh,
Coast,
gotcha. Yeah,
Faerun.
probably close. All right, very cool. And so, but we're going to be taking a trip here soon, right? Will, you want to tell them briefly about that?
Yeah, we're
And then
going
our
to the
upcoming event.
America's American United. They're having a religious liberty summit up in the DC in the swamp.
The
It's like
swamp.
the 5th through the 7th, I believe. It's like over a weekend, but yeah, Faithful Politics. We're going to be out in the world, so if you see us, come say hi, but do it like in a soft and gentle way. I get startled easy, so yeah, you don't want to get startled.
Yes, I'm going to be taking, I think, my very first Amtrak
You've never taken an
ever.
Amtrak before?
I've never taken an Amtrak, dude.
Oh my
I
god!
did. I took trains when I was in Europe, and that was the closest thing. And that was an adventure, but that's a story for another time.
Oh
And we have
man.
a really cool event coming up. You want to tell them about that?
Yeah. So Beyond the Echo Chamber is this thing we're doing where we're bringing on some of your favorite voices that we've had on the show. The idea is it's not going to be an interview style. It's essentially going to be a lecture. I mean, most of our podcast episodes, I think, we generally try to run them so that way you walk away and you feel like you learned something. So we want to kind of accelerate that, and we're having previous guests come on. Again, lecture style, same kind of format as this. There'll be like a YouTube element, but um, the primary way to get involved, ask questions, is to go on Eventbrite, look up Faithful Politics, sign up for it, and then there's a link there that you can use to be able to ask questions and what have you. So yeah, definitely hope that our audience comes and participates, says hi. Our
Yes.
our first speaker is going to be Matthew Taylor. Um, if you remember him, he is sort of like our resident um, NAR expert, New Apostolic Reformation expert. He wrote
Yes.
a book called Violent Take It by Force, which by the way, like I'm about 3/4 of the way through, because it's available in audiobook. And even though we got
Nice.
the advanced reading copy, like this is sort of like insider podcast baseball, but like, we get these advanced reader copies. We try to skim through it, we read. But generally, at least for me, I generally don't read the entire books cover to cover until like much later after the interview, because I'm a slow reader and I like to absorb the things that I read. So
Yes.
I tend to really kind of take my time. So I say all that to say this, that I'm going through Matt's book right now, and it's pretty phenomenal. I mean, I knew it would be phenomenal, but to actually like spend some time with it, I mean, he does a really deep dive on like Paula White King, who's leading the anti-Christian bias task force at the White House, and he really kind of traces how she sort of like her career, her evolution, and her theology, and then sort of the road that she walked to actually get an office inside the White House. It's really like just phenomenal. So definitely worth checking out, but then also definitely worth checking out Matt, if you can come to our Beyond the Echo Chamber.
Yes. So, guys, make sure you put it on the calendar. Can you say the date one more time for everyone?
That is March 28th, 2025 at 12 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah. So come and check that out. And well, that's great. We got exciting stuff coming up, and we're going to be doing these point of views, by the way. Going to try to do them every, at
2 weeks
least
or
once a month,
once a month. Yeah.
maybe more frequently than that. Want to kind of get our voices out there, be able to talk because people don't get to necessarily hear more about us and some of our views when we're talking and interviewing guests because we try to really understand the guest, which is important. And we will talk and try to get some pushback, and maybe we'll do some more of that as we're going along. I think people can enjoy that, but really, this isn't about, our show is about really understanding people and getting that stuff out there. And it's excellent content, but we want people to hear more of us. And we want to do a little bit of a roundup of some news. So I wanted to throw some ideas at you. Will, are you ready? What do you think about the JFK files being released? Have you downloaded them all yet?
I don't really care about the JFK.
Really?
Yeah, uh, I'm like so uninspired. I mean, so I've read one article about the JFK files, and that was probably about 2 hours ago. Um, and what it said was how how the deep state, like there really is a deep state, and the CIA was trying to pin the assassination on, gosh, if I had a memory, um, some person, some that it's going to kill me once I actually remember the
That
name.
wasn't Oswald.
Yeah, like some other person that wasn't Oswald, and the CIA was unsuccessful. But then they also tried to um, they talked about the CIA like assassination attempts on this person. So yeah, that's all I know about the JFK files.
We
Are
have
you
no, I mean, I've looked at them a little bit. I mean, I haven't done anything really in depth. I just think it's interesting. What do you think is Trump's angle in releasing all these? And these promise to release all these different classified files. What is who's his target audience with this? I mean, maybe it's me. I mean, I kind of appreciate it, although I really hope we're not putting anything too like sensitive out there for like everyone in the world to see. But I imagine we're not. But I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think if you watch or if you follow any of his you know posts on Truth Social, it should make perfect sense why he's releasing these files, because I mean, like, you don't have to go far on Truth Social to realize that it's basically like the Timu version of Twitter, like it's just full of like clickbait and all kinds of stuff. I mean, like Faithful, we have an account with them, but we never post, or I never post anything there. Um, but I also think that well, this is what I thought the day before the release was, because on the same day that the files were released, he had a phone call with Putin. So in my mind, I just thought that he's just releasing his files because he really wants that to kind of, you know, like take up the news cycle versus the conversation he had with Putin. But it seemed like his Putin conversation didn't go all that great. So that really sort of like took the, you know, the news cycle. Um, but
What happened
yeah,
there? Wait, with the Putin, I saw that he talked to him, but I haven't. So I'm hearing in real time. You guys can
yeah.
enjoy
So
me hearing news in real time.
so they had their first publicized phone call, um, because I don't believe for a second that the phone call they had recently was the very first time they've spoken since he's been out
Since
of
he became
office.
president.
Yeah, like I just do not believe that one bit. So they had a talk. They were talking about Ukraine, obviously. Um, Sounds like Russia was in no rush to give any concessions or anything like that. Doesn't didn't really want to do any sort of ceasefire.
Really?
And Trump is basically like, okay, cool, because he's sort of beholden to Russia for whatever reason. He's never said a single bad thing about Putin, like nothing on record.
That's pretty wild.
It is
That's
pretty
pretty
wild.
wild. So he had this conversation, which is interesting because there's another story I wanted to talk to you and get your thoughts on. The White House basically calls judge challenging Trump deportation order a Democrat activist, and we have had now Chief Justice John Roberts has made has rebuked Trump essentially for trying to control or call for the impeachment of a judicial someone in the judicial branch. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so you're talking about U.S. District Judge James Boasberg, I believe is how you say his name. But
Boasberg, yeah, that's it. Looks how it is.
he blocked the deportation of Venezuelan migrants. The president just recently invoked the gosh,
It was like an act from 17 like
yeah, like
98
that,
or
that
something
and
like
the
that.
Alien Enemy Something Act. And the judge actually waited. There was kind of a threat of like, the judge was going to stop Trump, but but the judge had to wait for him to actually invoke it before, like he couldn't really act on okay, will he do it or won't he do it? So he had to wait until he actually did it. And then basically just did a TRO or a temporary restraining order. Um, or no, I think he did a national injunction, which is sort of like, it's similar to, like when like the abortion stuff, or like any of these other big pieces, these judges can do like these nationwide injunctions. Basically, puts the brakes on things. Um, so this judge did that, and it upset a lot of Republicans. I mean, but before I even say that, like, let me just say, like, the people that the Trump White House wanted to deport and get out of the country, like, these were bad gang members. Like I don't want to like sugarcoat it. Like
Right.
they were actually bad people, and they probably should, not be in the country anymore. But so we're not talking about the Colombian or the student from Colombia, that was here in a green card and got, or they were trying to deport him. I'm not talking about that guy. So,
Mm,
but the judge did recognize though that, you can't just be a dictator for a day and circumvent the laws. There's a process. I mean, Trump was wanting to do this to kind of score political points. But he could still score the political points. It's just, we're a country full of laws, and you're the president that ran on law and order, So, what's interesting though about this judge is, because I looked him up just today, because I
mm,
wanted to see what other like rulings this judge has ruled on. Like, basically, is he just like totally anti-Trump or whatever? But no, like this judge back in 20, I think it was 15 or 16. I think 16, was the judge that actually ordered the expedited release of all of Hillary Clinton's documents.
I saw you
Right,
posted about that.
yeah, right before the election. So, like, if this person is trying to win an award for the least liked judge, from either political party, I think that he's doing pretty good for himself. So, yeah, man. I mean, Trump is doing Trump things. I don't think it should really surprise any of us about what
Yeah, I
happening.
mean, here's an interesting thing. So Steve Bannon talked about that he won't rule out that Trump would try for a presidential run in 2028. What do you think about that?
I mean,
And
like,
that's going to require doing away with one of the constitutional amendments, right?
yeah, I think it's the 22nd. But
After FDR, he was
yeah,
there for like 12
I mean,
years or something like that.
none of this should surprise you, but also, like, if we just backed up for a second, um, like, I don't know what the heck Trump is doing. Like, and I hate the fact that we have to even talk about him.
Mm,
Um, but I understand that there's a lot of people in America right now that are just like beside themselves because they're just like, I don't know what to do because, you know, I'm a trans person and I don't know, like I told a friend of mine recently who has a trans daughter, and they were looking for tickets to go to some country, um, where they couldn't be touched, and essentially was asking for my thoughts on it, and for the first time I said I think that's a good idea because, like,
mm.
I I don't know what the future holds for trans people in this country. Like, we're not even at 100 days yet, like, and already like this administration is trying to wipe their existence from, like, everything, from serving in the military. I mean, they were trying to kick them out. I think another judge did just put a pause on that. um,
Yeah, I saw that.
so I mean, I just don't know what's happening, but, like, I think people are scared and people are nervous. We'll get to one of our audience members' questions that they sent in later about maybe what we can do about it. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's just like there's one side of the country, and I'd almost say, it's starting to probably leak over into like Trump adherents, but that just don't know what the future is going to hold, um, for themselves or for their job or, yeah, for anything. So, but yeah, it's really sad. So, like,
Yeah, yeah, and the third term, that's kind of creepy,
yeah.
or just unsettling. I'm of
I mean,
creepy.
like just to kind of put it in perspective, like, as you and I are recording, the I saw across my phone that Trump's going to be signing an executive order tomorrow to disband the education department. You know,
Hmm.
like, you can't do that. you know, like you can't use an executive order to, um, basically run a country and do the things that you want. Because if you could, then we basically just live in a dictatorship. Like, um, and he has already broken so many norms in the way that our country runs, that if we don't feel the impact now, like, we will feel it, in some form or fashion, whether that's, in our pocketbooks, whether it's in, you know how we get food on our table, to whether or not, like, a country that we used to travel to for vacation is even a safe country to travel to anymore because of their views of America. So, like, getting rid of USAID, which is basically like the America's, I don't know, tithe, if you will. Like, we are
Mm.
out there helping people. Is there fraud, waste, and abuse? Sure, of course there is. There's fraud, waste, and abuse in, like, private companies, like, but getting rid of the entire program, um, and USAID was always kind of considered, like, soft power. So meaning, if we are trying to
Diplomacy.
if we're trying to build relationships with certain countries, um, like, it's easier to do when you've done something nice without asking for anything in return. So, that's that. But then also, like, just the US position on Russia. I mean, in the past, like, just 2 months, like, Trump has completely done away with, like, any of our foreign policy approaches towards Russia. Um, and our allies are reacting. Like our allies are banding together. They're realizing that, hey, you know, if America's loyalty will only be determined, depending on who's in the White House, then like why would we want to do business with them? Because like, you elect this person, they're good. Then you elect that person, they're bad. There should be some foundational things that America stands for. And Trump has just gotten rid of all of that. So who knows what sort of impact that's going to have on us. But like,
And of course, Congress, are they, because it's Republican, their hands are tied kind of thing? Like they're not really doing much, or there's not really a Republican, um, you know, sentiment or among some of them to try to put any stops on any of this.
yeah, so Republicans are one, scared. There was reporting about Republicans going home and speaking to their constituents, and then getting basically booed off stage, kind of thing. Um,
Hmm.
there's also, so people are upset, and Republicans don't have the wherewithal to stand up against Trump. I mean, and just today there was reporting, I think it was by CBS, but that Elon Musk was donating money to congressional members of Congress who will back impeachment of federal judges that work
Hmm.
against Trump. I mean, if you just let that sink in for a second, you're like, the richest man in the world is essentially paying Congress people to support initiatives that you know are favorable to the president. So I mean, if you are one of these like Republican senators, House members, and you are looking at how competitive of a race you're going to have this year, like having a couple $1 million probably sounds pretty good. I mean, Elon gave Trump like 250 million for his campaign. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, we live in weird times. Tim Walz, he's protesting,
he he is.
praying that Tesla doesn't do well.
Yeah.
Uh,
What about you? Like, what are you hearing in your conservative circles? Everything is peachy keen.
I don't know, man. Not necessarily. I'm not necessarily hearing that. I've had some people tell me that they're concerned that did vote for him, for Trump, and I think that there's a lot of angst that people do feel. Um, that's one of the most searched words, by the way, on Google right now is angst.
Really?
Yep. Uh, and over 100,000 plus searches in the last 2 days
Hmm.
on the word angst. And that's from the Google Trends website. But it so one thing that I really want to do is we want to continue to find people that I it's big on like it's important to me to find people that support Trump so that we can talk to them and understand, because both you and I didn't vote for him. So we had this that kind of leans us in a way away from him, and I really want to understand what like how their reasoning and everything behind how they feel like he's doing. I will say, like when I was reviewing for a podcast that we did on another show that's going to come out in September, I think. Um, but I was reviewing both the DNC and RNC platforms, and a lot of the stuff that Trump's doing seems to be already have been in there. Even like that saying like dismantling the Department of Education and this mass deportation. Um, some of the things, it's really concerning about trying to just impeach judges because they're not doing what you want them to do. That seems very concerning to me. And
Mhm.
of course, you just get the guys like, Matt Walsh. I saw just posted about how it makes complete sense and this judge should be, not disposed of. That's not what he said. But basically, they should be impeached. They should be kicked out. They should be, completely done away with in terms of their power. And I don't know. It's just it's concerning to see all this. I mean, I remember feeling um, before, especially during the Obama years, like, dude, I wish that we could get rid of these judges. I wish that we could impeach these judges, or what's up with these, And so you do understand when a judge makes this decision, right? And they always say unelected, right? That was a big thing. These unelected, four unelected people decided that everyone had to, accept same-sex marriage. I remember a lot with that in the Obergefell case, um, and I understand how people feel, and yet, of course, we have now like this. I really respect Elon Musk in terms of his business acumen, in terms of his his a lot of things about him, honestly. But he's not elected, and it seems like he's making a lot of major decisions. Maybe I'm getting it wrong, and that's just it's so it just things the pendulum just swings, dude. It's like whatever. It's just amazing how people change their tune, and how if it was uh, Kamala in the White House right now doing this, we would be losing. I mean, my conservative friends and my MAGA friends will be losing their minds, absolutely losing their minds.
Mhm.
I remember that happening. I remember people coming to me in tears when Obama got reelected, and he's never going to leave office, and our country is over. Um, and yet I
You-
feel like that's kind of the really actually the case right now. Not that I don't think our country is over, but like I
Yeah.
do think we have a president that's not he if he can get a third term, I have no doubt that he will try to do that, and a fourth and a fifth. I mean, I don't see why. I haven't seen anything that would tell me something contrary to that. And I'm just waiting for when waiting for when people are starting to justify that, like, oh well, he's taking. It's just I it's just it's mind boggling to me. If we want to have
Well,
a
people are
debate
already
about term
justifying.
limits, okay, let's do that. Or what? Yeah, I know they're already justified, absolutely, and it will. And it's just like, what? Just because he said it, that makes it justifiable? It just I am. Yeah, I feel really ignorant to really speak on a lot of it. That's part of the problem. Another thing is, but I feel very concerned, and just feel a lot of hypocrisy in it, and a lot of double standards. Because man, I saw how people reacted, and Obama never said anything like that, to my knowledge, not even close. And I just saw the way people reacted, just with the idea that he. I mean, I don't even know where it came from, and I'm sure I could figure it out, or someone said something somewhere, one of the conservative talk hosts or whatever. Um,
Well, what's funny about what you just said though is like, and I think I've said this either on the show or I've told you before, where I remember the way I felt when Obama was elected. Like he was like the first black president, and
yeah,
for most people, it's like, oh hey, that's cool, But like, I guarantee you, for every black person in the country, it was like an eye-watering moment.
huge deal.
Like,
Yeah,
and for better or for worse, that sort of sentiment, that impression I had of Obama carried on throughout the rest of his presidency. I mean, like
mm,
I idolized him, like where it's
mm.
funny, it's like around the same time he got elected, you were freaking out preparing for war. I'm like ready to make a golden statue for him, like
Yeah,
and and it's just like it wasn't until to be honest, it probably wasn't until Trump came on the scene in 2016 and you start seeing how people are like deifying him, and I did have like lots of moments of reflection where I'm like was I like that with with Obama? I mean, I didn't ask anybody, but like I knew I was like that with Obama. Like, and my name is Will Wright. I'm a recovering Obamaholic. But
Right.
I mean, I still think he's a good man. I think he loves his family.
Sure.
Um, you know, but I think that some of his policies were flawed. Definitely. The health insurance, Obamacare is not one of them. Just so I can be clear, like I fully support Obamacare, and I recognize that at the time, like there's some people that were really concerned because they're just like, and even I remember my pastor at the time I was going to this church, and my pastor was like, "Oh, with Obama, he's going to force us to, have to provide abortions for our secretary, or like, he's going to force us to have to, you know, marry same-sex couples and all this other kind of stuff, and we have
Yeah.
to stand
Yeah.
up, like." And I remember at the time, my wife and I were looking at each other like, "Oh, I'm like, we don't really have any problem with, you know, gay marriage or anything like that." Like, and we were the worship leaders at the time, mind you. So, it's funny to kind of see everything switch where now it's like, I can look back, appreciate what Obama did, feel good about my vote, but also recognize that he killed a lot of people with drones. Um, he deported like 2 million people or something like that, and um, so he wasn't necessarily like the be all save all. He didn't speak up enough, I think, about social justice. Um, but for all the things that I actually kind of hated about him, I'm sure some of the things that many Republicans really liked, you know,
Right.
uh, about him. So yeah, which I think that this is a good segue just to kind of
Yeah.
get into this question. I want to make sure that we address this question before we run out of time because we're already just chatty Cathy's. So we had a question sent in by our super fan Monica. How's it going, Monica? Um, and thank you, Monica, for
Hey, Monica.
all of your likes, shares, reposts, and
Yes. Yes.
yeah, and just interacting. So she wrote a question, said, this one's for both you and I, and it goes, with so many infuriating, sad, and scary things coming from the occupant of the White House and his toadies, how do you keep your faith in God, and how do you stay optimistic about the future of this country and the church? So why don't you take a stab at that first, Josh?
Sure. It's interesting. Toadies. I what an interesting word.
When I hear the word toadies, I think of like one of my favorite bands when I was in high school, called Toad the Wet Sprocket. If anybody's familiar with them.
I am not. I just think of like I think of somehow like Mario and Luigi and those weird looking Goombas or whatever, but I don't know why I think about that with toadies, but it just kind of makes that's what it kind of brought to mind. I think that I can keep my faith in God because um w- well there's a lot of reasons, but if if my faith in God depends on who is in power, that's going to be like that's not a great place to put that faith in God. And I'm not saying that's what Monica is implying. I think the question probably has to do with why did God allow this to happen, or with it's just so, or it's just so difficult, like seeing this for her that like why I can't make sense of it. And I think that I understand when people think that about any number of things that happen that really are disturbing for them personally. And it kind of gets back to this classical thing, this classical idea of evil, and what has got allowed evil. And I'm not, by the way, I'm not calling Trump evil. I just want to make sure that that's clear. I mean, that's a different question for me, a very different question. But the idea itself of, hey, why does God allow these things to happen that I would not be okay with, or I wouldn't allow, or I wouldn't, it just doesn't make sense to me. And Christians have lived under really terrible regimes in the past. And and again, like I'm not trying to. Again, I've told you I have mixed feelings about Trump. I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm concerned about, um, and I understand why people are concerned. But what I'm saying in general is that the Christianity has lived under Caesars. It's lived under dictators. It's lived under terrible kings. It's lived under Islamic rule in the medieval age, in the medieval times, and that had various levels of persecution and all of that. It's lived. It's been in China. It's lived in under the communist regimes. It's lived under a lot of different regimes with different amounts of success, and but it's survived. And my faith in God has to do with what he did in Jesus and through Jesus, and then in my heart. And we aren't guaranteed to have a great government. I wish that we were, but it just that's nowhere in the New Testament guaranteed. Um, and I just don't think it's a guarantee that any of us could hold on to. That somehow God promises us to give us this great leader and great government. I think if we do get someone like that, that's great. And I think that if a country is trying to live according to moral principles, I think that's in general going to fare better for them. But again, we don't have any kind of guarantee. And my hope for the future, again, it cannot be in any politician and anyone being able to turn things around. Whether it's bringing us into a golden age like Trump has promised, or but any of the other people that basically say the same thing, not in the same way, but they're all like, "Hey, we're going to enter into a season of prosperity." And what presidents are going to say, "Hey guys, you elect me, we're going to go into a season of austerity instead of prosperity." I mean, no one gets elected on that, so they don't say that. They're always going to tell you things. Um, I think actually probably one of the presidents that was the most honest about some of that was Jimmy Carter. And they freaking I mean we know what happened with Jimmy Carter, dude. He was not treated well in the end. And again, I'm sure that's a simplification. But all that to say is we can't my hope can't be in that. For the near term, yeah, I want to be hopeful. I am hopeful. I hope that the tariffs, the things that Trump is doing, that there's some strategy behind it that will be good for America economically. I hope that he that we don't get alienated from our allies to the past the point of no return. I hope that that I don't know. There's a little bit of sanity restored. Um, but I don't feel very hopeful in a lot of that. Because I just know we're so divided. And that's exactly why we're doing this, to try to be able to talk about these things, at least if we can do it on the local level. And so it's honestly this podcast, my friends that give me hope in the near term, my own ambitions, my own sense of purpose, that gives me hope in the near term. And trusting that God is sovereign, that he is in control, that gives me hope. But my ultimate hope is not in this life. Um, and I don't think for any Christian our hope should be in this life. That's kind of my thoughts.
Sounds like you're you're all about getting high on hopium.
Bring it on, dude.
Yeah, what's interesting about this question was when we initially solicited, our audience folks to give us questions about things. um I I struggled to come up with an answer right away, which is good because it caused me and forced me to really kind of think a little bit. Um, but I did think about it, and it's weird. Like I'm coming at this from a different perspective than the one that you came from. So the question, and I'm paraphrasing, is whenever the person who occupies the White House is acting crazy, how do you maintain your faith? And I do think the person is important. So obviously we're talking about Trump. um and what I think the question may either be implying, and if not, apologies, but I'm going to answer it kind of under the premise that it implied the religiosity of those that occupied the White House as well. So, when you see, fellow Christians that are not acting like Christians, and are actually doing things that are almost like the complete opposite of a Christian, like that could be faith shattering. But I also think that it just depends on the Christian, um, who's making that observation, because like we live in a time now where people are going through some serious deconstruction. They're becoming evangelicals, and the reasoning or rationale behind all of that varies a little bit, but I think it all boils down to, um I've been sold you know lies my entire life, essentially. Not even so much about the Bible, but the people that like had me trained in this sort of like form of Christianity. um and like I mean, my heart just goes out to folks like that. I mean, I wasn't raised in the church, um but I can imagine if my entire life um revolved around this faith, these traditions, these things, that are sort of like core to what it means to go to church. And then all of a sudden you come to find out that, wait a minute, this is all just like, pageantry. It's all dog and pony. Like none of that, it's real. Like it's not biblically grounded on anything. It's just like you want it for me not to preach because you don't want women in places of authority. Like like so I can totally get why people lose faith. For me, it's a different story. Actually, and I had this conversation with your dad um recently after service, where I was talking about how difficult it would be for me to deconstruct. And I'm not saying that necessarily to put myself like in a higher status as somebody else, but like my um my inception point to Christianity um was different than people that are raised in the church, right? Like I legitimately felt like I was redeemed. Like there was a transformation. If you knew the will before, in my BC days, my before Christ days, like you probably wouldn't have liked me because I was just a real jerk. um so there was a radical transformation, at least for me. If you were raised in a church, it's like, where's that transformation? It's like you're just growing up with it. Like you're and there's like there's these steps that your church tries to teach you. It's like, okay, your kids are going to learn about Noah's Ark first, and Veggie Tales. Make sure you watch Veggie Tales, and oh yeah, and make sure you watch God's Not Dead. um there's one fire one I forgot. But it's like, you know go watch all these movies, go do all these things, go vote Republican, and you're a Christian. And as people just mature, and they're just like, wait a minute, like, no, like that can't be right. um so so I say all that because I think it's important to at least do a bit of an autopsy of where our faith is grounded in. um and what's sort of like the basis of that faith. Because this really got me going, actually, just recently, because I wrote a blog, and by the way, I have a Substack, and the intent of the blog was to be a bit controversial. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was essentially blog from the viewpoint of like some HR person who works for an organization called Christianity Inc. And the blog took the form of like a denial letter. So if I could set the stage, applicant applies for membership for Christianity Inc. And gets denied. And so obviously, like, the reader, the first question is like, what the heck? Like, like, once you understand it's a bit of a parody and allegory, you're like, okay, what? So Christianity Inc. was supposed to represent Christianity. Person applied, basically meaning the person wants to be a Christian, and they applied. Um, the person acting the role of the HR person essentially denies them because um, they're transgender, they're like a Democrat, and they didn't vote for Trump. I mean, the list could have gone longer, but those are just the three that I chose. Um, in the conclusion of the blog, there's a little bit of an Easter egg, and it's like it's the entire thing that the blog is premised around, because the HR person says, I appreciate you answering these optional questions, such as, like, do you believe Jesus is who he says he is? Like, that's the optional question. They got it right, but yet they were still denied. So the whole point is, like, you can just do the one fundamental thing that's core to every Christian's belief, and that's, hey, like, we believe Jesus is who he says he is. Um, so you can believe that and still be kind of like ostracized in the Christian community because of all these other things. And like, you may not even be considered a Christian. I mean, I was told I'm not going to heaven because I wear a hat when I did worship. So um, yeah, so it's like, I don't really know, like, what does it mean to even be a Christian today, and like, how do we know that the Christian or Christianity that we're practicing, the way that we do it, whether in the church or elsewhere, is really what the Bible says, or is it just, are we just sort of doing carbon copies of, the way that church did it, or that congregation, or that denomination, or something like that. So I don't know. What do you think about that, Josh? What do you have to do to become a Christian?
Yeah, man. I mean, I read your blog, and it definitely, I understand the controversial part of it. And do I think someone that's trans can be Christian? Yeah, of course. I mean, I think that anyone who reaches out to God and you know falls in the mercy of God and asks for His mercy and His grace, I think can be accepted into the kingdom of God. I think one part of it that the Bible essentially talks about is that Jesus is Lord. That was like the main, like that was the main refrain and motto of the early church. It was the motto throughout the first centuries of the church. I mean, it should the motto throughout all, but they've changed it throughout Christianity in different contexts, but also always with Jesus at the center. Jesus is Lord. And so that begs the question, what does it mean for Jesus to be Lord? And I think that's where the rub comes in a lot of this, because I do think that God's mercy is way beyond ours. Number one, He's way more merciful than we are. That's my opinion. He's way more gracious than we are. It's funny because we're gonna have an interview with Matthew Vines. He wrote a book, God and the Gay Christian. It's an affirming book. I'm about halfway through it. I'm just listening to it, and he goes through the passages that have been used. To call them, you might have heard them as clobber passages, And it's interesting because I it makes me think about like how our presuppositions, which are the essentially the assumptions we make about the world, like we all have the starting point, and we don't have time to go into a lot of that tonight. But essentially, are they very much did they drive our interpretation of the Bible and who God is, as much as evidence or more, I would say, than evidence, than exegesis, which is the technical term for a very systematic and thorough study of this ancient text, which we have the Bible, which is a very ancient text, and we it's going to drive so people can go through the idea is that people can go through the exact same process and come to different conclusions, and that should help us. I think it should have us wonder, how can that be the case, that we can look at the same data and come to different conclusions? And a huge part of that, if not the main primary driver, is our presuppositions, that essentially the whole person that we bring to the text, our experiences, what we already think, what we already believe. Most of us aren't really following, like we are following Jesus, but many times it's really following our parents' Jesus instead of like the Jesus filtered through our parents, filtered through the pastor, filtered through
Yeah.
this theologian, that theologian. That's natural, right? I'm not even saying that's wrong because I don't think it is. I think that's just to be human. But I think the important thing is acknowledging that. And so, what do I think about someone who's trans coming in and becoming a Christian? Well, I mean, I think they can become a Christian like anyone else, and they would do it in the same way as anyone else. They would come to a recognition of themselves as unable to save themselves and unable to earn their own salvation, and to that they can't do it, and they're coming to God and His mercy, and in the gospel, the good news is that God has had mercy and He sent His Son for us, and so they can fall in the mercy of Jesus. But then they're going to bring their presuppositions, and those are going to drive a lot of the ways that they view Christianity, and a lot of the ways that they interpret texts. And just like for them, I would say it to you, Will, to myself, let's acknowledge our presuppositions. Let's acknowledge what we're bringing to the text, um, and at least get it out there. A lot of times they're unconscious. At least get it out there so that we can know, like, this is already coloring our interpretation. And then we can start to ask the question, when we get out there, we can, at that point, can be criticized, not in you're bad, but critically looked at by ourselves and others. And we can learn from that. And I think the trans person, as much as me or anyone else, has to do that and has to wrestle with, what does being Lord mean, and how does that affect my trans um transness, like for lack of a better term, how does that affect my identity, my sexuality? um and there are a lot of resources out there that are going to tell you that everything has to change. There's going to be resources out there that are going to tell you you're just fine as you are. And they might even use the same exact process. But I think it will be important to see what process they used, how they came to the conclusions, how they understood the text and made sense of it. Um,
But here's
because,
well,
yeah, go ahead.
I do have a question. I'm curious, like how would you apply that to, just some other heathen that is not trans but is coming to the faith? Like, would you tell them the same thing, that they need to, like, you know be sensitive to their biases, their
Oh, yeah.
presuppositions? Because like for a trans person, or for, I don't know, like somebody in that same vein, like I would venture to guess that most Christians would probably agree with you, but do this like, but wink wink, like 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 yeah, you can join our club, but you know the deal, right? Like, and it's
Right.
like I hate that. Like I just hate the fact that, you know like, we are sort of saying the right thing but for the wrong reason. um you know and like, I don't know anybody that would say the same thing, say, hey, yeah, anybody can come to the faith, but just make sure that you're not using God to justify bad behavior, or justify behavior that I view as bad. um because I want you to view the behavior bad too. And so it's almost like, when when I came to the faith, I smoked. I was a heavy drinker, um, and I'm not anymore. I felt that my conversion experience, there are parts of me that God just thought would not be very useful, um, in His kingdom. But he didn't like speak to me to say He wanted me to, change my political affiliation. Like, he didn't he didn't speak to me and say, hey, I want you to stop hanging out with your army buddies because they're not Christian or whatever like that. So I don't know, like help me better understand, what should a regular, you know everyday person, and I'm that's not to say that a trans person is not an everyday person, but you know somebody that's not necessarily in the crosshairs of the religious right, say, like, what would be sort of the advice you would give them if they accepted Jesus?
Yeah, I mean, excuse me, I would say that, let's just say for the sake of argument that, you know, putting someone who's member of the Proud Boys, and or Ku Klux Klan or whatever, and they're can they come to Jesus? Can God love them and forgive them? And the same, I'm saying that because kind of those, in our current context, those are kind of the extremes.
Well, the Klan's already
Um,
a religious organization, I think.
it is. I mean, I know that they say they're Christian, and so I would say the same thing. Like, okay, you're saying you're Christian. What presuppositions are you bringing to the text and about God, and have you questioned those in any way? I wrote that I got down. Um, let's see, it was a couple things to just ask yourself, and I won't go through all of it, but it's like the first thing I would say to anyone is to name their assumption. And so presupposition, assumption, they're very similar. Um, but what do I assume to be true even before I start I start thinking about this issue? Um, where did I learn this? You could say that there's a tool because I said so test. If your only justification for a belief is that's just how it is, you've likely uncovered a presupposition or an assumption. That's just the way the world works. Um, Another one, how did I come to this conclusion? Emotion, logic, experience, authority? Which one's doing the heavy lifting for this belief? And I would say that for anybody. Um, this is a key one. Are there intelligent, faithful, morally good people who believe differently than I do? Can I name their best arguments? Can I actually strongman, which is a term that I've come to, instead of strawman, which is basically taking the argument, making it way worse than it actually is, and arguing with that instead of what they've actually said? It's actually trying to make their argument better than even what they've said. And I love that concept. And I've actually been trying to do that with the Matthew Vines book,
Mm.
because some of his conclusions I deeply disagree with, but I'm trying to strongman it. I'm going to my AI tools and I'm saying, like, hey, give me like the best argument here. Here's what it says. Give me the evidence for it. And I got to tell you, it makes me very uncomfortable. And this is a steel man technique. You're trying to get your opponent's view better than they can. Um,
You got to use grok. Don't
Yeah,
use it.
use don't use Grok, dude.
No,
You're not
no,
a
no,
fan
no.
of old
Use
Grokky, dude.
use use Grok to if you want answers that will comport with your already preconceived narrative.
That's good. There's just there's three more. I'll go through them very quickly. For interrogate the fruit. What kind of person is this making me become? Go to Galatians 5:22 through 23. Am I more loving, more joyful, more peaceful, more patient? I mean, dude, that's huge. And if you can't say that, then you might want to question what your beliefs are. It's not woke. That's for my MAGA friends. That what I just said isn't woke. That's Galatians. That's in the letter of Paul to the church in Galatia where he was saying that. So I just want to say that. Invite honest dialogue. Who do I trust to tell me the truth, or what they see as the truth? How can I get feedback loops, and then practice humility? Um, Am I trying to be right, or am I trying to be transformed? Come on, dude, that'll
Yeah,
preach.
that'll preach. Yeah.
Am I willing to be wrong? I mean, dude, just that question. Am I even willing to be wrong? Am I willing to go through that? And I might do a blog. That might be one of my blogs that I'm doing. I need to start writing for our Substack. Um, but I just, getting back to the question, like what would I say to anyone? I would say that list right there, I would tell to a trans person, a MAGA person, Ku Klux Klan member, myself, you. I would say to anyone, because we're all going to bring this, and at the end of the day, dude, their relationship with God is ultimately they're going to be before God. And they're going to have, like, I can't have anyone's relationship with God. I can't tell someone they don't have a relationship with God. I can say, hey, here's what I think the scripture teaches. Here are some behaviors or issues or whatever that maybe have you in bondage. And I do personally think that some of this stuff within the LGBTQ can be bondage. Now that's my view of it. I'm willing. I've never been able to say this before, but I'm willing to be proved wrong on that. I actually, in some ways, it's not that I want to be wrong, but I do want to understand it more, because it's one of the most pressing, if not the most pressing issue in the church of our time.
Yeah.
Besides that and political. Yeah, go ahead.
It really seems like like number one, I appreciate you saying that and reading out those things about presuppositions, because as you're talking, it reminded me of like those are all the same questions I ask my kids when I ask them to try something new.
I
Um,
like that.
so it'd be really easy to remember, but um, yeah, and I just forgot what I was going to say. But anyways, with that, we're already over time, so we should probably like
I love doing this, man. Yeah, so it's cool. I appreciate you, Will, and yeah, I know we're over time. We got to quit, but I just I appreciate you, and having you as a friend has. I really recommend becoming friends with someone that has very different beliefs politically than you. I really do recommend
I do too.
that. I think that that's really good to hear what other people think, because that identifies your assumptions just about more than anything else.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Well, yeah, well, yeah, appreciate you too, Josh. Definitely
Thanks,
appreciate
man.
our audience. Make sure you check out all of our stuff, Faith Roundtable. Make sure you register for um, Beyond the Echo Chamber series. Buy a couple T-shirts. Subscribe to our Substack. Do all the things.
Do all the things, man.
And let us know if you have other questions that you want for us to address in the future. We're on all the socials, so we're not hard to find. You can go to our website and email us directly, and we respond to all emails. So um, yeah, and just thanks for everything that you all are doing out there.
Yes, thank you.
And remember, keep your conversations not right or left, but up. And we'll see you next time. See ya.
See ya.
All righty. Cool. If you want, you can air this episode tomorrow.
Maybe I should do that. I'll probably just work on it tomorrow, because I don't think I'm gonna do it tonight. But I'll do it and like air it during the day tomorrow.
Um, cool. Yeah. So the oh, not a lot of not a lot of people on YouTube. We